2, 1.
Hello.
All right, guys, we're back.
Back with a kitten.
So today we're going to get into something we teased about a couple episodes ago, I think.
At least.
Which is Julien's,
7 now. Yeah.
Julien's Mind Palace. Now, I'm going to tell you where I first heard about the story was, I believe, at Coach's Week in Minnesota. It was the first I had ever at least heard about it, and I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah.
It was just really interesting. I never put that much thought into thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
this,
I just do. You know what I mean? If I'm going to think through, I just am in it. You know what I mean?
Joker, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Look like a guy with a plan. Yeah.
Fuck. All right. Yeah, you're right. He's right. But
well, he has but that's because he has a plan. So that's why it's a good. Yeah.
But I think it's a really cool concept for people to hear because I think they'll understand a lot more about how you think, the way you work on ideas, the way they sit with you, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't look at them. Yes.
That's the part I'd like to get into also. Yeah.
Right. So I have to explain where it comes from, I guess. But that's also the thing is, so this is not something I taught myself. Like, I think it's very important to start there. This is something I've always done in some way, shape or form. So I didn't wake up one day, read it somewhere and decided to taught myself. I've always done that. It's just like those are skills I've sharpened over time to a very useful point. This is something that relates to something from Nietzsche that I asked you to post like a few weeks ago, where he was talking about secret gardens, like the seeker of truth needing secret gardens. And he was like, thank goodness I did not, I can't remember the phrasing, but he was saying basically, thank goodness I did not let anyone see it for a long time.
Yeah.
What he meant by that is like he had to develop those gardens, those secret gardens where the truth lays before he could go into the world and be challenged by it.
Yeah.
And that's something that always really resonated to me. And one of the things that attracted me to Nietzsche as well is when he started to talk about this, because I recognized right away what he was talking about. So to explain how it's like, I'm going to use a little bit what is called the Lassi Method. It's something that the Greeks actually came up with, where it's a trick used by, the people that do the World Championship of Memory, with like the cards and stuff like that. Well, memory actually works visually.
Yeah.
You can't just remember a number or stuff like that. You actually, the way to remember things is to associate them with images, stories, things like this.
It has to be attached to something that you almost already possess.
Right. So if you've been following us or been to my seminar at the beginning, like 2-3 years ago, there was a number that I talked about in the seminar. Do you remember the number?
Of course not.
Of course not. It was 24B 15 51 A 13 75. Why? Because he's Jack Bauer, 24.
Yep.
So in French, he was Jack Bauer, right? Drinking 15 liters of pastis, which is 51, in Marseille, 13, and Paris, 75. So it's a way that Idris Aberkane, in his book, Free Your Brain, talks about how to remember sequences of number. And so I've read that shit like 5 years ago, and I still remember number to this day. So it's not a fluke. It's 24B, 15, 51, A, 13, 75.
Yeah, I can make one up once.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not lying. And by the end of the podcast, I'll say it again so I can show. But anyway, so the Greeks actually talked about that in a way to memorize things placed on, associated with places or images, stories, things like that, to increase your memory power.
Yeah.
And again, there's a book called Moonwalking on the Moon with Einstein that explains like a journalist who went into the world of memo competition, whatever it's called, and actually ended up winning the world championship that year just by learning how to associate numbers with special things. And this thing was Einstein moonwalking. Yeah. And then he associated cards with each thing. It works really well. And so that lays a little bit of I use that because it lays a basis, even though it's not what I do. It will explain a little bit what is it that I do naturally, right? So I have certain ideas that, I read studies and everything, but most of the work is done somewhere in my brain, right? It's not done on a chalkboard or stuff like that, because I'm not good at necessarily like doing, for example, a thermodynamics calculation. That's not what I do. What I do is I put things together. I'm very good at patterns. But you can't just look at stuff and necessarily see the patterns coming together. Sometimes I can, but it doesn't
Pattern
always work like that.
recognition is a thing that you and I have talked about, where for me, I do it the way you really shouldn't do it. When I was going through some of these tests for this specifically, right? And I'm going through these tests, and I am doing it the way I do it, which is really inefficient computing.
That's what everybody does.
Talking my way, and it's this thing.
Right, everybody does.
Real pattern recognition is not quote-unquote work.
No.
It is there, and it is
So, some are blurry, others are sharp, clear.
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
Yeah.
It's the best way. Like when you look at this X's, and then there's a Y.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like people will look at X's, and that's not how this works.
Yeah.
I see it in 3D. There's a wave that goes toward the Y's. That's why I know where it is. So I don't need to look for it. There's a wave. There's a 3D wave. Have you ever looked at those fucking...
Do you remember those word finds? Right?
Yes.
It's a grid of letters.
And then
this is going to drive Julien crazy. You know how I do them? Always have done them. I look at the first letter that it is. I look at the word, the first word. If the first letter is W, I scan until I find a W. I check all of the ones around it, and then I move on.
Yes,
I literally,
think most people
it is
do
a
that.
fucking grind.
Right.
I can do that faster than most people. But Jesus fucking Christ.
Right.
That's why I don't do those things, because it's exhausting.
Have you ever had those things, where if you pull back, you start to see an image?
Yeah.
Right. That's what this is.
Yeah.
Except everything for me is like that. So I just know I have to concentrate a specific way, and things, the image shows.
It just comes up.
Right. Yeah. So it's actually, for me, it's mostly that. When I look at stuff, there's a shape that changes. I'm like, oh, there's a different stuff there. Oh, there's your Y.
Yeah.
That's how most of it happens. So patterns are a little bit like that. They're either fuzzy or they're sharp. And when they're sharp, I know they're right.
Yeah.
So, but I had to hone that. If you just live like this, you'll go fucking nuts. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work like that. So what I did from the beginning, for whatever reason, is I created a mind palace. So that means that I have rooms where certain things are. The thing is, I can only be in one room at one time. I cannot be in different rooms. I have to be in one room because the pattern lives in that room. So for me to see the pattern, I have to be in that specific room.
So overwhelming.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that.
Everything needs a space.
I did not create the mind palace. Yeah. It was there. Yeah. It's very hard for me to explain.
I'm stamping a logic thing under it, but it just seems like
I did not create it. Yeah. It's just I just made it clear for me to walk through as I get older. Mm-hmm. But there are rooms, right? And so the first room, for example, I have most of the clear stuff for StrongFit that is on the chalkboard. The second room has a different set of patterns. And for example, I have a room where the stuff that I'm working on it's on the chalkboard and it's being solved, but it's fuzzy. Mm-hmm. Because it's not clear yet, because the pattern, I don't know, but it's fuzzy.
And you're not, like I would do, be in there, you're not grinding on it. It's just there.
Well, there's no grind.
Exactly.
When it's clear, I can see it. Yeah. If I can't see it, that means it's not clear. That means I didn't figure it yet. But I'm not doing the work.
It's not the work. It's
like you have to understand, this is me walking through a house with rooms. I just walk through them, and either the thing is there or it isn't. And so I have rooms where the stuff is sharp, so I can read it. So I'm like, oh, it's there. But it's me walking through a room, so I call it the palace, that has rooms where things are. So people do that with memory, where they create rooms and then they go into Proust, the very famous French writer, was doing that, where he said he had called it the mental library, where he would go mentally into a room, go into a library, he would go into rows. Into rows he had books. He would take the books, open the books, and start reading it. Yeah. He had a photographic memory. And so he could memorize entire books. So he put them into places, and he would walk into there, go to the library, go to the row, go to the book, open the book, and start reading it.
Hella autism, man.
How cool is that? Yeah.
That's crazy.
I can't do that. Yeah. I cannot do that at all. But what I have is I can walk through rooms where stuff are. I have a room where I have all the pictures of Yaya and videos and memories and everything. So sometimes I go, And I open the door. It's a very specific location. And then there's that big picture that I love of her that is on the wall on the right side. It's like a 10 by 10. And then there's all the other pictures are on the wall with the videos and everything. Or I just have to look, and here's the stuff. And then and I remember the video with the smell. I'm gonna get into that one, but with a clarity that I don't have on the video. Like it's better visually, but you don't have the experience. Those experiences are recorded and they are in the room. I have a room where I have a couch made out of wood. Go figure. Where I can sit and think. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
more comfortable too.
Yeah. I'm guessing, but it's made out of wood. I can't, but it's like this. It's like those big ass chairs.
Yeah.
But like round everywhere. Wood where I can sit and not think. I can't stay in that room very long. For 30 seconds sometimes.
The fucking couch sucks, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe, but it's an open. It's very interesting because it's an open-ended room. Anyway, so this is a skill that I started to develop over years. But so for people to understand how this works. And this is where, again, the logic stamp comes in, and they don't understand how this works. So when I walk into the mind palace, I always come from this direction, and then I'm about to enter. The door is on the left, always. The outside of the mind palace is white walls. I go to the door, but then you have to understand how this works. The door is wood, right? But that's not enough. What color is the wood? I know exactly the type of that clear, but just a little bit dark wood. But
have you developed that detail in there to keep things sharper, or has it always been? It's the detail things you pay attention to more and more and more to.
Right. It's just like the more I go into it, the sharper it becomes. So then it's almost like there's a door, right? So I pass my hand on it, but you have to develop the clarity of the mind palace to the point where I can pass my finger like this, and I literally feel the grain of the wood under my fingers. Like literally when I do this, I feel the grain of the wood on my fingers, on those 3 fingers.
Yeah, basing it on the whole experience instead of just a quote visualization.
Right, it's not a visualization. It's I am walking into the mind palace. I feel the wood under my fingers, and then I grab the handle. But then the more you do that, you were like, okay, but what type of handle? Is it wood? Is it metal? For me, it's metal. Silver or black? And then, is it cool? Is it hot? So, and what's the shape? Is it like just a handle? The ones that, it looks like a pear a little
fresh
bit.
in there. Does it smell musty?
Right. So there's very little smells, but there's always touch. So that when I open, I can feel exactly the handle coming in. And then I take the stairs on the left. No. Like I'm sure the hierarchy of the brain would explain why I take the stairs on the left, but I'm sure it's because I'm going through that certain motor patterns. That means that must be placed on the left of the brain because that's where I'm going every time. So I take the stairs on the left, and then I go up, and then there's that first room where some of the stuff for StrongFit are, and then there's a second room, and then there's a room where stuff are blurry, which is where the patterns are being worked out, and then when they're ready, I can go into that room, but it's one room at a time. I cannot be in more than one room. But there are rooms for specific things. But when I'm in the room, I'm in the room. It's like I am physically in that room. So I can just sit and look at stuff and get it. And that's how I do most things. But that's also why sometimes I'm probably not there with people because I'm in the room. Yeah. I'm somewhere. Sorry if you're that boring.
Been there, guys.
Yeah. I'll go but that's also where I'll go because I need to retrieve something.
Yeah.
Or whatever, like I need a memory or I'm not comfortable with something or whatever, I'll just go in there, go in the room, get what I want, and then come back out. But there were always rooms. And it's that visual thing where when I'm really sharp, when I'm really well, I can superpose that pattern, like, the 3D thing with the actual surrounding world. Yeah. There was one girl that I like really a lot. It didn't work out, but there was that one girl when I saw her, there was a juxtaposition with another image on top of her. So she was always like double, basically, because I could put the pattern that I saw in her on top of my vision of her as I was watching her. That's the only time it ever happened with someone.
Yeah.
I can do that with things. I could never do it with someone. She's the only one I was able to do that with a person. But that's when I'm really, really well in my head and everything is cool. Yeah. But I could actually put the patterns that I was seeing, but juxtaposed with her. It was cool. It was very interesting. But it's like I see it.
Yeah. Talk to me about the quote unquote work that gets done in there, or the figuring out of things that isn't figured out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Elaborate on that a little bit, or give me an example.
Right. So it's linking things together. You know, like sometimes when you don't understand something, you'll feel empty. Mm-hmm. You know, it gets frustrated. Before it gets frustrated.
Like I'm on the verge. I don't fucking know. Yeah.
Like, and you look at something, or you know, like when you lose at the game 30 times in a row, and you go like, I'll never fucking get it.
Yeah.
You know, like, fuck it. I'll never be the boss on that level, right? There's almost that feeling of a loss at that moment, right? So the opposite of that is what happens in that room when it becomes clear. It's like things get connected together, and it's the opposite feeling of loss. Basically, it's like I've gained something. I guess that's the best way to explain it. I've gained something. This is like when I was reading Ling, and I was like, you know, like it's that thing, like almost like a sound, except it's not a sound, it's a vibration that goes through my body, where I was like, there's something there. Like a vibration that goes through almost like the entire palace, like, and a super warm vibration where I was like, I gained something. Yeah. Like something, and usually what it means is there's something new on the chalkboard that appeared. And that's what it was when I read it. It was yesterday. I read it day before. I read it and I was like, this fits all the other patterns. Yeah. So, you know, like, I don't even know there's pattern missing. They just appear. And then suddenly there's a new one that got in.
That's when Julien says things like, on a subject that he's talked about for a total of one day to me, and says, just so you know, we'll be talking about this for the next year. With certainty.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Do you think that those are things, specifically like something like that, or even the vision of patterns? Do you think that that's a thing that is inherently you? Or is that a thing that you have a connection to just see better?
Is math discovered or invented?
Yeah.
That is always the great question. So Plato...
quote unquote, the patterns are there.
Are there. Yeah, there is, yes.
You can't argue with that in a lot of things. The patterns you see in movement, some of the patterns you can see in human behavior. And everybody, pattern recognition is a thing that humans do. Some just see patterns more efficiently and better than others. The patterns are there.
That's not the question.
Yeah.
There's a question that's been going around in math for a very long time. Is, are math discovered or invented? And Plato talked about it. Plato had that idea. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of things wrong with stuff. But, sorry, that idea that there was a world, almost like a dimension, where ideas lived that we just pulled from. Mm-hmm. And that idea has continued with humanity forever. And a lot of mathematicians say math is discovered, not invented. Like, we do not create the stuff, we just pull from that, almost that dimension, like that meta level.
Well, I think where there's a lot of ways you could look into it from a physics standpoint, but
from
I think
or even a spiritual
but let's pretend that that time doesn't run linearly in everything, right? So that just possibly at some point everything has happened in every combination or whatever.
Could be that.
And that you just bing, that's going to be the one to plug in here. I don't know, but I think that
I see it as a meta level. Like for me, but that's
it's just a layer with which one connects.
This is spiritual talk, not scientific talk. Yeah. I see it as a meta. Remember the system cannot be complete and coherent at the same time. Mm-hmm. The Gödel theorem, like you need a meta level to be able to be seen. That's what I see it. I see that there's a meta level where this is only, in a way, like remember the hologram principle that Susskind came about, saying like the world is actually all the information contained in a ball. When it comes to information on quantum mechanics, right? So information as a bit of information, entropy, all that stuff. All information that is within that ball is contained on the surface. That's the hologram, principle. But that means that there's a meta level there's always a meta level, right? And that's Gödel with that idea of the only way to be complete and coherent is from a meta level, right? So for me, I see it in a way without the religion that Ramanujan brought. Ramanujan is that, that genius with prime numbers, mathematician genius, like from India, who said everything was brought to him by his deity, his family goddess, right? So I see it like that without the goddess part, without the religious part. Yeah. It is on a meta level, and for whatever reason, there is I like to visualize it, like through the mental palace, I can access a tiny, maybe hole in the fabric that happens to be in my mind palace where it leaks. And I get access to it sometimes.
Well, that's why I'm always bothered by the fact that ideas and thought, specifically science, a lot of things too, are moved in this incremental fashion.
That is not true.
Which sucks.
That is not true.
And I think that's a lot of the way that school is taught.
That is factually not true. That is factually untrue. All you have to do is read the history of science. The history of science is a bunch of
huge groundbreaking jumps.
Exactly. And then incremental changes made by the drones off of the discovery of one dude. We go back to venture capitalism in science. It has always been like that. There is one outlier, a dude who takes and goes 90 degree left, changes the course of humanity, and then all those fucking drones come in and milk the shit out of it and pretend they're the scientist. And then there's another guy, turns the direction again this way. And there's been, you can count the number of people like that has truly changed the course of humanity. Like we know who they are, but everybody else just pounded on that. Scientists today are herd animals. They go wherever someone puts a flag, everybody goes there, and no one wants to take a risk.
It's the science equivalent of when the new iPhone comes out. 5 million companies have to make new knockoff iPhone cases for the new phone.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Cool, good job, dude.
Right, that's what we do.
Work.
That's what we do. Yeah. But even like, you had Jobs. Steve Jobs happened, and now everybody has a phone. Like it's obvious.
Yeah.
But when he did it, it wasn't.
What I think is even as interesting as the phones. You look at the before that even was like the iPod. You ever look back at the very first announcement of the iPod? It's a clunky old hunk of shit. But at that moment, there wasn't even a way to buy music.
Right.
Everything had to come. What the idea was is music in my hand. Yeah. Whatever. I don't have to have a physical thing to put it out.
I thought it would sound like shit.
So then it's how are you going to get it? How are people going to... All the incremental stuff comes to making that system work. Yeah. But the fucking idea is I want a device I can carry with me that has all my music on it. I don't have to fuck with it. It's such an interesting... That is the idea. The execution of it is fucking...
So he created a field, right? So this is what Carl Friston is doing with the free energy principle. This is what Schrödinger... Remember, DNA came out of the book What is Life? Yeah. DNA didn't come from Dirac or whatever his name was. It came from Schrödinger, who said there has to be a crystal-like formation that can keep the code going under high temperatures, 37 degrees. Yeah. And so he laid out the groundwork necessary to find DNA. But the drones kept working. And then what did the drones do? They go, we're going to map the entire genome, then everything will be solved. Yeah. I remember when they said that shit, just like physics, everything is solved before Einstein and quantum mechanics. And it's the same stuff. Like, so they came, once we have the genome, we realize there's RNA. Yeah. Now, there's epigenetics, which seems to be far more.
And now we have to start over.
And you remember that they still say that 93% of DNA is junk. You want to bet it's not junk?
That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
You want to bet it's not junk? Yeah. 93%, how could it be junk? Yeah. It's not junk. Isn't that fucking obvious that it's not junk? Right, so this is the problem with science. And so that idea that it's incremental is factually incorrect. It is a bunch of people that had some kind of inspiration from, and I'm not saying God, I'm an atheist. I'm not saying what this is. It's just, to me, all I know is there is a feeling associated to it. That's why I say I always know when I'm right, because I'm not right. Yeah, it's right. Yeah, it's not me. I just have access to that, and it's somewhere through the mind palace where there's a tiny hole in the fabric, man, and I got a glimpse of it once in a while.
Well, I think there's something interesting there too, because you said it's something you've always had, and you've also always been on the autism spectrum, And
obviously.
I'm thinking, and a lot of that does lead to pattern recognition, to the point where it can be probably obsessive for you, having to deal with it in real life all the time. If you didn't have, I'm just thinking
Yes.
through. I'm not saying that logically you applied this, but I think
No,
that,
but it's a defense
but
mechanism.
exactly.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally.
It sounds like two
a
things.
shaping of
It
it.
sounds like two things to me. It sounds like a place for you to be able to go in and deal with the things you need to deal with without all the other noise of everything else.
Yeah.
For one.
Yes.
It also seems a place separate, so that you don't always have to carry that, because those problems will be with you if you dealt with them the way,
Yes.
or thought problems,
Yeah.
whatever, deal with them in your daily life will be maddening. You know what I mean? Dragging them through and trying, and it's just not going to work. And so I think it is part a safety mechanism for that.
Oh yes. He was born out of distress. There's no question.
And I also wonder if it has a lot to do with, generally speaking, that it sounds also like a very calm and safe space, which based on your childhood seems like at the very least something that was necessary.
Yeah, it was probably necessary.
It serves two functions
on many levels.
Yeah.
One of the necessaries. What's the word?
Necessities.
One of the necessities of that was is to, in a weird way, this is the only place that is calm, where my brain does not go completely, like I have to stop looking outside sometime, because it's like my eyes are constantly catching patterns. Like I'm a very visual person, very, very, very visual person. Like I see patterns, like it's the best way. There's something called synesthesia. That is the capacity to see, well, for example, like he was a guy of Pink Floyd. The reason, like that album with all the blue and then, the lasers, it's because that's how he sees music.
Yeah.
He was saying he sees music not in sound but in colors. That's synesthesia, right? In a weird way, I have a form of synesthesia, but that is based on, I see patterns in 3D shapes.
Yeah.
I see patterns in shape.
Well, and in multiple layers too. Knowing you well enough, you see it in movement, but also movement in combined with the overall human behavior. It's a very interesting thing. I find this to be very useful for you, though, when you coach, because there's little things that you do where it allows you to be so precise, not only that you see the pattern in the movement, but the pattern in the person.
Yes.
Because then you know exactly, I need to introduce this specific sentence to this person at
that time.
This time.
And
time
is
it fucking pisses me off, Julien, because I am as a person who hasn't coached for decades. I am a person who tends to over-explain and over-talk. That's why I have a podcast. I just talk a lot. And so when I coach, it's, fuck, Tyler, you're confusing some of these. I always have to pull back on over-communicating.
But it's also time-based.
Yes, but in your case, it is always, I see so often you come in, it's one thing at exactly the right time, and it fucking works. And I get so, I'll like storm off. The thing we talked about before with my wife who was pushing the sled, and you were like, oh, just use your pecs. I'm like, I would have gone over there and said that 5 seconds later, and it would have been mad. I also would have said 2 more sentences, which would have murkied the thing.
Right, and plus you had to wait, because you had to wait for the
until
moment.
It was necessary.
Yeah, until he was starting to quit, and she was getting away from it, and therefore losing to. So there was a timing to.
But it's very interesting, because I see the value in that is, if you're very effective, but it also means that people don't get a lot of your time, which is okay.
Everything has 2 layers.
Yeah.
So that's why I knew I love that woman so much, is because I could see the 2 layers, but it never happens in real time for me, not with someone. And but things have continuously 2 layers. It's the thing and the patterns around the thing. So it's like there's the thing and there's something around it that is the pattern, that is the thing. You know what I mean? It's like you could see, I don't believe in ghosts or so, but imagine if you could see the person and the soul of the person at the same time, right? That's what it feels like constantly. And so but the patterns for me, I guess, is what they would call synesthesia, is based visually. So that means that when I look at something, I don't see something. I see the thing and the thing.
And the thing behind the thing.
Exactly. And the thing that is the thing, right? I see both continuously. And so it's just like not all the time. You know what I mean? So the Mind Palace is a place where I don't have to look. I don't have to. I can turn off the visual if you want.
Yeah.
So it's a place of solace for me that I've always needed.
What does it sound like? Is it quiet?
Yeah, there's no sound whatsoever.
Nothing.
There's nothing in it. There's nothing in the rooms. There's all the chalkboard because I need something for the stuff to be. But it's wood everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's a light kind of beige everywhere. The rooms are shaped very specifically. And then there's a stool where I sit. But there's nothing in it. Like the entire thing is empty. There's no place where I have anything.
Yeah.
All of it is empty. There's no sound. It's all visual. Like I do not live I live in a entirely visual world, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's very strange. Everything is based on, but sometimes like my eyes, it's continuously that because it's like the eyes are constantly working to reshape things, to make them fit when I know them to be, but I don't always match the outside stuff. So that's why I need the mind palace, is because sometimes I can sit and reflect on what the patterns behind the screen are. So it's always like the thing and the thing behind the screen continuously. It's exhausting. So sometimes I need the mind palace it's cooler there too. I don't get as hot.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right, but it's that too. It's like, so when the world sometimes gets a little bit too much for me, I'll just, I'll back off. It's just like the patterns are getting too aggressive for me. Mm-hmm. Just too often too aggressive. And as I get older, the mind palace is the secret gardens from Nietzsche. You know what I mean? Is there. It's as sharp. Obviously, it gets sharper as I go. Obviously, but it's untouched if you want. Yeah. And so, but that has been the same relationship with it since. For me, it feels since forever. So that's why I never feel like age, because I don't change. Because the concept of me is in my mind is very strange. You know what I mean? So like for me, the way I see myself is sitting in the mind palace. Yeah. I don't see myself in the world. I just see myself sitting in the mind palace. So everything is seen through that, if you want. That's what the mind palace is. And so it allows me to see patterns. But again, maybe I don't see them. Maybe I just see the behind the screen, whatever that is.
Well, that concept, the behind the screen, that's the thing that I have always thought was interesting, because every good idea I've had has not come from me fleshing it out. It's never come from me working on it. I've had good ones. Yeah. But the things that I want to fucking try to hash out, that's what I find now is the idea that I have is the idea that's good, and the way I work on them, I still work them out very inefficiently.
No, but Einstein said that though.
Yeah.
Einstein said the same thing. He said you were saying like he could spend 99% of his time, like just hours upon hours on trying to flesh out, make something work. Yeah. Go for a walk, forget about it, be completely clear, and he would come to him. Yeah. Like he had ideas about that too. Well, it's all the great minds have said the same thing. It's like ideas are not worked out. They just.
And I think I think that is such an important lesson. Whatever is on the other end of whatever that is, you know what I mean? I think it's an important lesson for people to learn to think in that way, because I don't think there's any harm in it. In that really, I think you cannot go wrong giving space for quote inspiration or whatever that is.
Right. Yes.
You know.
Yes.
But for me, the way that I find that is I first will just. Talked about this before, like in editing video, stuff like that, like some of the longer form stuff we've been doing is I just mash myself into it, and I have to fucking have nothing else in my life, and it is maddening and fucking crazy. But then at that point, I feel as though I am scattered into it, the project, every single piece of it, and then I grind, and it sucks, but I'm not grinding because I'm trying to figure a thing out. Yeah. I am like... And at that moment, it's not me and my ideas. Yeah. But the work for me is I have to just bury myself. It's
yes. Well, you have to lose yourself in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's very.
But then you learn every time.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know. What I learn is that I can trust that process, and that I'm not going crazy. Right. Because that's really challenging. It's been, and a lot of them are new skills, new tools I don't know to use. You know, all that stuff. It's something simple like the Yaya short film thing was, I shot it because we thought it would be cool, right? We thought it would be neat. But in executing it, I just had some ideas of how I wanted it to look and go that I don't know how to film. I don't know how to use any of the tools of editing that I've been doing the most basic editing. And so when I want something, all of a sudden I'm in it and poof, an idea. I don't fucking know how to make that happen. So then I'm in there, then I'm having to actually learn like a skill amidst it, which is very interesting.
Right, but
it's really rewarding.
Process. Like you sound like a lot of artists that I've met.
It's rewarding for me because at the end of it, I've learned some just basic technical process, but I didn't have to have some motherfucker tell me about it. You know what I mean? I did it, which means then my understanding of it and how I approach it, how it works for me is fully mine.
You sound like a writer. I've heard that from, because I grew up on writers, you sound like a writer. That's exactly the artistic process a writer goes through. And then he's always disappointed with the result. It's always like, this is shit. I've heard a writer saying like, look, you start at 60%. If you get to 80, just praise the gods.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was interesting, and this might be a little different than that, is even in that project specifically, I'm always one to rush to maybe put a thing out. Only because I get that process that I described is exhausting. I have nothing with it.
No, plus he has to come out.
Yeah, but I get to, well, and some of those things go pretty quickly, but the issue is I get to that point and I'm like, all right, it's good. And then I wait. I'll set a fixed time. Like, I think it's done. I will wait 24 hours. Then I will look and make another couple passes. And almost always am I like, you fucking idiot. I got to clean up some shit at the end, which is always good to do. However, on this last one, on at least the Yaya one, when I went through it, I was so mashed up into that fucking thing in the end, because you just get this simple 10-minute thing, but it's just crazy. But I get to the end of it, and I was like, it's done.
Yeah,
it's done.
That's it. Yeah.
And I had said even ahead of time, I have way too much time into this for me to not give it my 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just to creative process.
Nope, I didn't.
That's it.
I was done. I was going to give it 24 hours to look at it, and I looked through it one more time, which was about the 700th time I'd been through that 11 minutes. And and by the end of it, I was like, I went through it again. I was like, I don't see anything now. I'm not going to fuck around. It really was because I knew it was done. Yeah. And now, and the point for me too is once it's out, when I put it out, it's published, it's out of me.
That's the thing.
That's the thing, is that I felt like at that moment that it was cancer. If it stayed in my body, I really felt like I even told Megan, I says, I'm publishing this tonight because it has to leave me right now, or I will not sleep
This
tonight.
Is how I feel about the podcast.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. It has
we have to do
this.
Yeah,
once it's published, it's not mine anymore. My brain can turn on to something else. Yeah. But that's the importance of publishing your work, regardless. Yeah. Because it has to leave you. Otherwise, it's not good for you.
Well, that process of sitting on that,
it's not good for you.
And I know that because I'll obsess, and I'm not a person who obsesses over projects. You know what I'm saying? Not outside of that narrow window. It's in, it's out, and I go on. Yeah. But that's a
true artistic process, though.
That's interesting. Well, I'm figuring out as we go.
No, but that's exactly how I feel about the podcast. Yeah. Like that's why I don't want to also wait too long for them to come out, because I don't want this podcast about the Mind Palace, I don't want it to sit without anybody seeing it, because if otherwise it's still there, it's still touching me.
Well, it's in purgatory.
It's still attached to me, and I don't want it. I've explained. Now I want it into the world where it's not attached to me anymore. It's not mine anymore. I've talked about it. Now it has to leave me. And if it's not published, it just sticks around. I don't like it.
Yeah, I feel that a lot. I feel that fully.
But I think, this is exactly what writers talked about. That's a true creative process.
Wild.
Oh, people don't know that, but you're actually very artistic.
Have moments, yeah.
No, like at the core.
I've
just
things,
a big dude who
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I have my things, for sure, that I see. But I don't connect to it on a full level either. There's pieces where I see the art in very specific things.
That's what artists are like that. Yeah. Or some artists, like I've known writers that don't understand music. Yeah. Which is so strange, right?
And I can find the art in the most intense death metal too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's moments I've been riding my bike to the heaviest shit, and I will be almost in tears.
I don't understand paintings.
Yeah. Paint art is something very interesting for me when I look at it.
I don't understand.
Outside of in person. You know what I mean? Yeah. In person, for me, it's the texture. Because I see how the paint went on. I don't see that. The layered paint. And I have a friend who's an artist who does very much, I'm going to say very paint heavy stuff. Yeah. Where so much, where it's, you see thick brushstrokes and it's very three-dimensional. I can see that, and I can appreciate that because what I see is each bit of the work.
See, that's...
But if I see something that is not textured in the painting, it means nothing to me. It's very hard for me to connect.
I don't get paintings. Yeah. If I look at this, I don't get... I see 2D instead of 3D. Yeah. There is no pattern to this for me.
It's not real, it's in 2D.
Right, but sometimes it's almost painful. Yeah. Because there's a hole. Yeah. Because I don't see... There's not that second layer. So that makes it like... Sculptures I like, because I see what the guy says. Yeah. From the way he did it, I can almost tell where his thumbs went and stuff like that. On painting, I can't do that. Yeah. So it's almost, there's a hole there. Art is very interesting in that sense. Yeah.
Well, guys.
Anyway, there it is.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. It's a great look into Julien's mind. I'm really glad we got to have this one. Yes. Because it was a thing that I had heard you talk about now 4 years ago, 5 years ago? 4 years ago?
I don't talk about it anymore, that's true. Yeah.
And I always thought it was really interesting, but it's also, I suppose, in your case, if you go into every seminar with every crowd, certainly not seminar talk, that was Coaches Week talk, but it's a thing that sometimes, depending on the crowd, you're like, it was weird because at that moment, I didn't give you my first inclination if I heard someone was going to talk about that. I would have been like, oh, Jesus. Hippies. but there is this thing between meeting you a couple times before that and knowing you that I understood that it was real and it meant something to you and it was very not just important to you, but it was like a part of you.
Oh yeah. That's why I talk about it without any issue, because like this is me. Yeah. By the way, 24 B 15 51 A 13 75. So see, I wasn't bullshitting.
Nailed it. I bet I know what I'll do. I have that written down in my StrongFit notebook still from my first seminar.
Oh, you can post it, yeah. Oh, I know. It's 24B 1551 A 1375. So, like it's in the Adris Aberkin book. I'll find it and I'll show you. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's got us wrapped up for today. We'll see you next week. If you want to support the podcast, head on over to podcast.strongfit.com. There you could donate or join the YouTube channel. Also, go to strongfit.com. There you're going to find our online courses, education, and all of our seminar dates should be there as well. Head on over to strongfitlibrary.com to keep up to date on everything Julien's been working on. And follow StrongFit1 on Instagram and Tyler F. and Stone.